You know it looks weird, right? Like, yeah, I'll give you that I'm out there. I make like far fringy kind of like left field analogies, but it was right after I mentioned Cosmo Septepinra because, you know, it like when somebody's name is Cosmo and they're not just called a Islamic, but they're called a radical Islamic. That's crazy. Like, his name is Cosmo. His name is Cosmo Septembera, and they couldn't say Septembera. They kept saying Septepinra because he was in the military. You remember that he's in the fucking military, and instead of Septembera, it's Septepinra. It's Septepinra. How do they were saying Septepinra? Like he's like marching already. He's a black power radical Islamic Muslim. Do you know anything about, like, even fucking Hebrew Israelites and all those, like, they stayed in their area. They stayed in their lane. Even if they're fucking crazy, even if they're, you know, shouting down people for no reason, then fucking they're not making points fast enough, then I know it's a lot of theatrics and shit. You gotta give them what it is. I mean, like, it's concerning when you find out that the person that you actually know the name of the person who they place in front of you as the Christ, and he's supposed to be a rendering of Cesare Borgia. It's in the Apocrypha. So what? I mean, goddamn, you can give him that. That's a little disconcerting, but not that it's disconcerting, but that you always knew that it was some bougie, and then now it's a logical explanation and it's given some documented or factual. Then they're gonna put that out. They're gonna be like, oh fuck, we got the ticket up out from this. So they tried some things, but then they went on to talking a lot of scripture, and it takes you have to. The Bible is you need a freaking rabbi to interpret the Bible, right? And it doesn't look like they have any rabbis. But you make the mistake that anybody who, even if you're following the molester dude that said that dressed up like Enki, or said that he was Enki, and or a god or something from another planet and everything, and then he confessed to molesting somebody or whatever. I forget his damn name. Then, you know, like, even in that area, there's no talk of any Islam. They're not doing that. It's very much a step in a different general direction. And then, you know, there's also the conscious, which conscious is like interested in a cult, and interested in some history things, you know, and you know, they get in trouble for fucking mentioning that, you know, saying Yaqub and shit. But the thing, actually, it's the Democrats that do that shit. It was Cenk Uygur that said that shit about Yaqub to the dude that was like a Trump dude. But anyway, look, Yaqub is actually a demiurge host, right? Like probably like Apollo or Archimedes or somebody like that. Eros, you know, Eros, Archimedes. Those are Arcturian examples of a Christ figure. That's when I always forget when I talk about the Christ energies, the different forms of the Christ, the child, the teacher, the ancestral, the that's in correlation with the sexual energy for the messianic. Then there's also now the figure, the Christ figure. This is a mythology, basically. Then mythology and occult are really keen with conscious. But like, there were people that said they were conscious and were living in dilapidated buildings and with minors, and turned out that they were, and they believed in revolutionary rape and shit like that. Like, I'm giving you a fashion nugget right now. Given all that shit as absurd and fucking wild as some of it is, like, people don't step out of their lane like somebody who just, hey, I solved the case, I'm the fucking best detective. Yeah, Cosmo Septepen Rises was a radical Islamic, because when he was in the military, he joined the fraternity that was least likely to result in suicide. You know, there's people that get tattoos and go wigging out. It's just known that it's not very good for people to get tattoos when they're in the army, when they're in the military, because it's a leap, and then all of a sudden there's this new person, you know, like, it's not for everybody, but it definitely had more people that were committing suicide was correlating to tattoos than it was with people who joined church groups, you know. And you know, the army provides Islamic too, but he went a different way. He never was in his videos talking anything about killing crackers, getting the man off your back. He never said anything about getting the man off your back. He might have said something like, stop like talking about white people responsible for all your woes and everything that's going wrong and every, you know, cotton picking ill. He's like one of those types. I watched him. I mean, I watched all his videos. Maybe in a little bit late, and you know, after, because he was unknown to me before he was killed. His show is called Convos with Cosmo. He works with the Money Team, or TMT. They work with like people like Colin McGregor and the other guy with Mayweather. But they were actually looking for projects that appealed to a well-being based demographic, and they and Cosmo Septepenral was doing, you know, work with them. His videos were about hygiene, how to dress, and the curing bitch assness, getting the girl, you know, you're starting businesses and attaining well-being. And he never had a gun until after he basically defended his rights, you know, not to be molested, and he had and not to be kidnapped, and he fucking popped the trunk, and they tried to look he was trained by the military, and he had a modified service piece. I mean, even if those, like, you can get me on some little facts and shit like that, but you can't just say, okay, I got you, it was not a modified. I'm not doing that shit. I'm talking about the things that they said about him, like being a government agent. There's people fucking saying he's a government agent still. There's okay, so I mean, fucking okay. Are you law enforcement? Well, law enforcement seems to think that he is radical Islam. Did they do so much looking into his interactions with the Money Team on his channel? Did they look at his channel to find out who he was? You know, daishiki is not a fucking Muslim thing. They don't wear daishikis. They fucked up. That's all black shit. I get it. I get it. That's shit that black people would know about. You know, a lot of black people wear daishikis and shit like that. Fine. But you're crossing lanes. You're crossing lanes, and it's not done. It's not even done. I mean, you're done talking about it. They're done trying the case. They're done investigating, but is it really done though? Because I mean, if it's a eyesore that they fucking don't redress things where they were factual errors, then how can you take them? They're not to be taken credible until you just redress the parts that were wrong. Unless you just don't really care for the people that you're trying to relate it to, you know. you're not really being a very good record keeper, you know. So how do you even have a job like that? And then the day after I make that video, then they're trying it again. The libtards are fucking saying that, you know, he's you know, like, they didn't say anything about him, but they were saying was that if we let gun rights be legislated by these conservatives, they will push over the black people and not give the black people their gun rights, you know. But do you know that a tesseract and a penis is the same thing as a pistol? You know, a tesseract is a box within a box, but it's also the shape of like the diagram of a box that's before it's put together. It looks like a T. When it's up, it's discharged. When it's down, it's cocked and ready to be loaded. It's loaded and it's cocked. It's ready to fire. Excuse me, like a cock, right? And it fires seeds that are protected. They fire seeds that are information that's protected by a shell, and the shell is supposed to absorb shock or contribute some nutrients to the carrier, like the birds of the aviary, like millet is an example, right? And it's you get words like military, right? Birds of the aviary and military. Even if it doesn't make sense because they didn't have the terms and that sync up in the timeline, it's in the modality before it emerges. You know, it's in the modality already. We're already going towards thermodynamic aeronautics back in the days of fucking ball worship. Thermodynamic aeronautics gives you planes, missiles, plasma cutters, and it's ballistics. But they didn't even have gunpowder back then. I know, it's like weird, right? They didn't have gunpowder. But I mean, you just have to look at those people. You know, they had child sacrifice and idol worship just like we do today. You know, just like so. I mean, people can't believe that people would do things like. But then I've seen things that they don't even redress. They made a B movie that was the answer to the controversy and around about the Atlanta child murder, where 100 people were attributed to 100 children their murders were attributed to a serial killer. It's a high success rate, and his MO was sloppy as fuck because he was leaving them on all these different places. He was punching out their left eye. It turns out they blamed it on the Ku Klux Klan, and in the movie they blamed it on the Ku Klux Klan, and then they narrowed it back down to a rogue, like, fringe of the Ku Klux Klan. A couple of, like, they basically still blamed it on the Klan and still blamed it on a serial killer, and they were clickbaiting Christians by representing the separation from the right hemisphere of the brain by punching out the left eye. Then TLC, left eye from TLC is the reemerging of the suppressed, and the psyche coming out with the condom over the left eye. It looks like a dislodged or battered eye, like a closed eye, or like a flower, like they've, you know, like a wound. They turn into like the condom wrapper. It looks like a freaking wound, like over the eye. It looks like a wound over the eye. So it worked. It's clickbait. And they were discarded, but they were taking shit from them. They were taking genetic material from them to find a treatable form and of muscular dystrophy, and then they changed it to sclerosis. When they found the treatable form, they changed it to sclerosis, and it was the military-industrial complex, the Centers for Disease Control, and fucking Big Pharma. You think they're gonna deny some shit like that? Look how long it takes me to say all that shit. You know? So back to the other thing, right? The news comes out and they're talking some gun rights shit. And the thing about, like, I did fuck up. I did kind of get sloppy, and I made another video after that talking about the damn gun rights. I shouldn't have done that. I said that it should be applied evenly, same way, like, because I was representing Kavanaugh and everything. But the same thing, I'm kind of like feeling like responding to shit before it comes out, and it's the sentiment. Like, as soon as they have the sentiment, I can feel it. I know it already. Then I'm hot, and I'm ready to activate. I'm responding to, you know. But then they, like, a little bit too soon, and then I was a little too vague. Because if you say that gun rights need to be applied evenly, or you won't have any gun rights, gun rights or no gun rights, like, you still need a gun. People don't want to have a lock on their gun when you use it. You want it to be loaded. You don't want the bullets in the trunk. I get that, you know. There's ways to get around that shit. Holstering, you lock it up when you get home. You keep it on your body. You don't make sure the kids are never alone in a room with it, even if it's locked, because they, you know, like, even though you think you might know your kids, you think they might fuck around. You know, definitely don't sell drugs to kids if you want to pack a gun, because you're just gonna get shot. It doesn't matter that you have a fucking gun, you're still gonna get shot. You know, you're still gonna get. Anyways, it's hella easy to sneak up on somebody with a gun. If you're smiling, they think that they don't know that you got beef. You can't recognize beef. So, I mean, and plus, I mean, I said in the other video that the way people rationalize kicking down the door and tying you up and beating you for the password for the safe is because they think and they feel in your mind that you've been swelling up and getting comfortable and you haven't been fucked in a while. Don't you think you have to kill them niggas? I mean, what is this talk of, like, people not having guns? I mean, I guess, like, it's about the concealed carry or something like that. People are just gonna, I mean, if you can't conceal carry, you're just gonna have to be precautious, because guns attract negative attention. You're more likely to use a gun if you're more likely to be in a situation where you're gonna have to use your gun if you have it. You might feel the power in your hand, and it might change your personality. You might have to tone down the whip cracker a little bit. But I don't see no cause for suggesting that people should hand them over, especially to a president that they claim to hate so much. Why they want to so rushing to give him the guns? Like, do they really believe he's not their president? So I guess that it rationalizes it, you know, because if you wanted to give your guns up to the actual president of the United States, then you might think that he's gonna, like, form a depository somewhere. He might give them back to you if you need them or something like that. But they want to give them to somebody that they feel that they hate and that they feel is not the president. Oh my God. Yeah, no, I mean, it doesn't rationalize. It doesn't. Stop stealing my shit. The only reason the only reason that they're talking about this shit now is because I gave them a cue. I was like, I let them know the moment that the sentiment was starting to. It's like a precursor. They want to build on top of it. You know, the Democrat is the precursor to Christendom. Demagoguery is the precursor to Christendom, and the Camelot mythos is probably twice as old as people think it is. And they let that out in the movie when they were making the series, because they had to rebuild this castle and library, and it was looted. They had to get another library. They had to rebuild the old Camelot, you know. And then if you go into it, like, they have all these different people, like, that you never knew was in the Camelot mythos. Then it could be the Thracians that led to the you know, like before Gaelic. Like there's Ireland is Spaniards, is not Spaniards, it's Spanish to what the day. Cipriano, Sao de Cipriano, or no, or there's, what's that de that's from Spanish. So they got that. I mean, they're you know, the Ireland was uninhabitable. Why am I talking about Ireland right now? Ireland was uninhabitable because it was brambles and bogs, and it was choked off with bushes and peat bogs and shit. People lived on the beach, and they had posture similar to mine. Basically, they put up windbreakers and fucking laid on mats and socialized on the ground. That's funny. Why did I get into that? Not just because I usually would make videos about this type of shit if I wasn't, and like feel like I'm being played for a sucker, you know. Like, you know that there's some things I can't act like we're moving past it if it was never a thing, because when it comes back and be like, hold on, how are you guys so advanced and shit, and you're not even familiar with the fact that your conscious movement was just calling Cosmos Septeppenra a government agent, like he worked for the Podestas or some shit like that. Y'all need to you need to look back into that and see what it actually is, because I know you just want to hate him. You know, it's not fucking Hard Bastard, because Hard Bastard defended the dude for saying Yakub. Then, you know, of course, in the infotainment area, then they're gonna go in on the Kemet people and joke about Kemet people. Yeah, I get it. They're, you know, they could be depressing sometimes, but you're not listening to the same people I'm listening to, you know. So it's just like, you're skimming, bro. You're dabbling. You're remembering the awful, you know, the awful shit. And people that, you know, like Irritated Genie put that dude out of his fucking misery. He's no longer on YouTube. He's pretty much killed him. You know, he's like, so if you're not Irritated Genie, then you can't really shit all over the spirit science people, because you didn't run them up out of here. And I don't want to go on too long. Like that was just a thing it was like, hey, there's other shit that you could look into. I never took at face value anything anybody said. I heard some things that people was talking about. I got more interested, and I dug up other things. I found other interests, you know. I you know, I might have thought that I had some interest in, like, etymology, lexicon, and contributing the sort of like directitudes that the elites could actually relate through the masses, you know, to communicate with the agenda behind the architecture and the way that you build. Basically, we have like certain ways that you're allowed to. It's code. You're not allowed to build, and you are allowed to build. Even Apache or like Sioux, they would like build with the to catch the rays of the sun or the shade or throughout, you know, like they only built from east to west, you know. Or like in South Africa, they didn't actually stack stones on top of each other. The simplest masonry is the most advanced masonry. Like Anasazi, you know, like you can't even see that shit when you're standing on the ground. You have to go up in the sky, in a satellite or something, in a plane, to see the shapes, you know. And you like, damn, how'd they even map this shit out? Obviously, there's a lot more shit interesting to talk about than the mainstream media fucking tinkering around and fucking looking at people's, like, you get more fucking social media terminology and fucking tee up enough stories fucking surfing around small channels on Instagram and fucking no, I'm not, like, I might be wrong, you know. It's not crazy if you be wrong every now and then, but I'm being wrong in the likelihood that I'm probably right, you know, probably, you know. And you don't have my issues. You don't have my issues. You're trying to jump out ahead of some shit. Oh, all along, I guess y'all had my back. I'm supposed to feel bad and some shit like that. Like, that shit is, that fucking lame ass shit. You're not about to be able to do that shit very much longer.